The Marvels is one of the better Marvel Cinematic Universe romps in recent years. While many recent films and TV shows within this interconnected continuity of superheroes have been hits like Guardians of the Galaxy Volume 3 and Spider-Man No Way Home, or complete misfires like Ant-Man and the Wasp, Quantumania, and Secret Invasion, which was literally, in multiple uses of the term, a shit show, The Marvels, at least in terms of quality, box office is a whole separate topic, belongs among the former category, i.e. it ranks among the better modern MCU fare. In fact, this Nia DaCosta directed movie, whose previous film I really liked, but I will not speak its name due to a paranoid fear of the supernatural, just covering my bases here, y'all, has a tone that balances entertaining lighthearted fluff, all while still taking the stakes within its own narrative with sincerity, fantastic character dynamics, and is a story that mostly focuses on powerful female characters, something that is awesome, yet all too rare in big blockbuster movies these days. Because if anything, female-centric, big-budget cinematic experiences are something that we need more of. Because, speaking as someone pumped up with estrogen, I love The Marvels. It was just so much damn fun. But before I go into more detail regarding why I liked The Marvels, I need to first go over Captain Marvel, the previous movie in the franchise, and a film of overall inconsistent quality. See, Captain Marvel was flawed. Sure, this 2019 MCU adventure featured fun 90s nostalgia, a good twist regarding the shape-shifting alien Skrulls, a cat that's secretly a wholesome alien monster, which to be fair, just describes a regular cat as well, a lead performance by Brie Larson, an actress I really like and respect, and how Larson's Carol Danvers, i.e. the titular Captain Marvel, was good female representation for the MCU, given that it was the first female-led Marvel movie, and that Carol Danvers is the most powerful superhero within this cinematic continuity, which was cool, because superpowered women punching stuff. It's a thing that I like. But on the other hand, Captain Marvel had a multitude of problems. For one thing, its female empowerment elements were not all that connected to the film's narrative and themes at large. While sure, Carol Danvers experiences some casual and even overt sexism in the film, and Jude Law's Kree alien antagonist Yon-Rogg is controlling, which can be seen as a parallel to an abusive boyfriend in a toxic relationship, the movie just does not entirely connect its feminist ideals to its overarching conflict against the alien Kree. After all, Jude Law's villainous Yon-Rogg is not manipulating Carol due to how she's a woman. Instead, he's using her because of superpower plot reasons, because Jude Law's character may as well be douche law. And look, I get that Carol's and Yon-Rogg's relationship is clearly that of a man trying to keep his female significant other in quote-unquote place, which if anything is very relatable for women in similar circumstances. If anything, it's a shared experience that many women unfortunately have to deal with, which as far as Captain Marvel goes, could have been really interesting as far as narrative and thematic storytelling goes due to how resonant it could have been. But the problem here is that Captain Marvel doesn't really verbally or explicitly tether the physical narrative of Carol overcoming Yon-Rogg's abuse with actual feminist empowerment, with the exception of one scene towards the very end of the film that feels like too little too late. I will explain shortly. Because Yon-Rogg is using Carol via horrid patriarchal power dynamics, but unfortunately the movie never explicitly points out that said patriarchal power dynamic. If anything, Captain Marvel as a film was being obtuse here. And I don't really think that works in a movie like this, because truly the filmmakers could have and should have been much more blunt and obvious about its messaging here. After all, to use a DC example, the narrative of the first Wonder Woman movie is basically inseparable from its feminist nature, and that movie f***ing rules. We will not talk about Wonder Woman 1984. Yet when it comes to Captain Marvel, the film feels as if there's a bit of a barrier between its surface narrative and girl power ideals, which are two elements that honestly should have been bridged, because as it stands, Captain Marvel doesn't hit the viewer in the emotional cortex as much as it otherwise should have. If anything, some of the movie's female empowerment attributes just don't land as seen towards the end of the film. See, very late in the movie, when Carol is at a low moment, Carol recalls all the times where she was knocked to the ground, both figuratively and literally, and how she always got back up on her feet, both figuratively and literally. And admittedly, on a surface level, seeing a determined woman bounce back from being on the ropes is a good and empowering message. It's uplifting, like a push-up bra, because my chest needs all the f***ing help it can get. Yet this aspirational feminist sequence just doesn't really work. While the prior explained sequence is one of the only clear parts of the movie where the feminist messaging is connected to the narrative, because, you know, Carol is literally getting off off the ground to confront the system that has abused her. This sequence happens towards the end of the movie, and Captain Marvel just did not lay enough groundwork with its feminist themes beforehand to where it would allow this sequence to feel rewarding, because on the whole, the girl power aspects of the narrative and themes in this movie are too opaque, a subtlety that just doesn't let this movie click with one's emotions too much, which is overall a damn shame when factoring in how Carol Danvers is in and of herself good female representation. As Marvel's first female lead superhero, she deserved a film comparable to the first Wonder Woman movie in terms of narrative and thematic creativity that broke down a gender barrier. But we unfortunately did not receive that, because despite Captain Marvel being a very powerful female superhero, the movie did not capitalize on this awesome feminist angle. Captain Marvel's female empowerment elements were only partially related to the story at hand. However, with that said, there was a bigger problem with Carol Danvers as a character within the first Captain Marvel, and that issue is due to her overall characterization. See, Carol kind of fits in with the Clark Kent Superman mold. She overall doesn't have much of a personality beyond striving to do the right thing and being a good person, which admittedly is not inherently a problem. After all, heroes being noble and altruistic are why they are inspirational after all. See Captain America and the appeal of a hopeful, non-miserable Superman that the DC Cinematic Universe neglected during the Zack Snyder era. Because if we are to go by Zack Snyder's execution of this godlike alien being, when we think of Superman, we also think of 9/11. But anyway, the point. Captain Marvel is kind of a Girl Scout. While she enjoys flirting with danger and likes to keep her emotions close to the vest, she is a being who is led by pure morality, which, as stated before, is not inherently a problem, because heroes will be heroes. But with that said, Carol's version of this archetype was an issue in Captain Marvel, mostly because in order to work, that type of character generally needs either or both a unique narrative built around that type of protagonist and or a supporting character that either has some depth or an abundance of personality to bounce off of, i.e. a foil, no relation. And Captain Marvel as a film just did not have enough of that. While Nick Fury and Carol had a solid back and forth dynamic, and the twist involving how the Skrulls, normally presented as villains in the comic book source material, were actually revealed to be innocent refugees persecuted by the Kree, i.e. the side that Carol Danvers is on, which causes our righteous hero to have a crisis of morality, the movie's Skrull reveal didn't occur until just before the third act, meaning the Skrulls and how they played on Carol's moral compass didn't become interesting until the last third of the movie. And in terms of Nick Fury as a character, while fun, because Nick Fury, because Samuel L. Jackson, just was not overall a strong enough foil for Carol Danvers. Like how a retail worker's uniform just does not accentuate my feminine features, Nick Fury does not always accentuate Carol Danvers' personality. After all, it takes a bit of screen time for these characters to meet up, and their interpersonal character interactions just aren't all too different from the character dynamics that other MCU heroes and comic relief sidekicks possess. Like as stated before, Carol keeps her emotions reined in, and Nick is a government agent who is only slightly more animated in his vocabulary and personality when compared to her, which is overall fine, but not good enough to be remarkable. And while sure these two characters can have enjoyable moments together, Danvers and Fury just aren't polar opposites that attract here. They are not magnets. If anything, the character interactions of both Nick Fury and Carol Danvers just didn't stand out enough, meaning that Captain Marvel's presentation of how its lead protagonist was impacted by the narrative and how she interacted with other prominent supporting characters was on the average end of the MCU spectrum in terms of quality. It was fairly mid. Thankfully, the Marvels corrects this problem. In fact, the new team-up movie led by Brie Larson's Carol Danvers, aka Captain Marvel, Teyonah Parris' Monica Rambeau, and Iman Vellani's Kamala Khan, aka Miss Marvel, creates a good narrative and character interactions that complement Carol Danvers as a character. Starting with the younger one of the group, Kamala Khan is overall the foil that Carol Danvers critically needed in the previous Captain Marvel adventure, mostly because Kamala's personality is the polar opposite of Carol's. See, where Carol is emotionally more reserved and play things close to the vest, Kamala is easily excitable and far more emotive in terms of how bare she plays her emotions, which only makes sense for her character. After all, as established in her good Disney Plus series and re-established at the beginning of the movie, Kamala is a good representation of both a Muslim American woman woman, and more importantly, or at least more importantly in terms of characterization and character interaction, because, you know, positive portrayals of Muslim Americans are in and of themselves are really important in year 2023, Kamala is a good representation of someone with ADHD, i.e. a person that is neurodivergent. And speaking as someone who is neuro-D myself, we can get very chatty about certain obsessive fixations. Like for myself, as seen on this YouTube channel, I love talking about movies, video games, TV, and heavy metal music, because truly the world needs to know more about cattle decapitation. My viewers must understand why Slipknot's People Equal Shit is the song of a generation. And Kamala Khan is like this, but instead of obsessing over the blessed soundscapes of Sleep's Dope Smoker, our lovely heroine is a Captain Marvel fangirl, and I mean that literally. Kamala has fan art, fan fiction, and aspirations of meeting Captain Marvel in person. She'd be a fan and would honestly fit in at Comic-Con minus the sweaty body odor. Probably. And now in the Marvels, Kamala Khan embodies a hyper persona that contrasts well with Carol's more emotionally reserved nature. Between the two of them, they honestly have a great and entertaining dynamic. And while sure, Kamala fangirling over a superhero isn't a 100% unique character dynamic in the MCU, after all, Kate Bishop's fascination with Clint Barton was similar in Hawkeye, there are some key differences for how Kamala's fandom over Captain Marvel and Kate Bishop's obsession with Barton are different, mostly because in Hawkeye, Kate's obsession with Clint Barton was born from surviving a traumatic event. She hero worships Hawkeye because she wants to be just as capable as him and be able to defend innocent people and those she cares about from dangerous entities like gangsters and aliens. You know, normal New York shit. Kate just wants to be like Clint, and in Hawkeye, Clint tries to unsuccessfully shut her down to deter her from this life of heroism and duty that would ultimately consume her life. Also, Clint desired to get home to his family for Christmas, but that's besides the point. Clint overall just rejected her, and Kate spends the entire series trying and ultimately succeeding in proving him wrong, which was an interesting dynamic. And admittedly, getting back to the topic of the Marvels, Kamala's infatuation with Carol could have potentially run into a problem where it repeated the Kate Bishop Clint Barton angle. It could have honestly been a repeat rendition of a super capable fan meeting their hero. But thankfully, Kamala's and Carol's dynamic is ultimately very different from Kate's and Clint's. In terms of Carol, unlike Clint's treatment of Kate, Carol doesn't initially push Kamala away. While sure, Captain Marvel is perplexed and even slightly amused by Miss Marvel's literal hero worship, Carol doesn't reject Kamala out of hand. If anything, Carol is willing to let Kamala join her on her heroic journey, even with the caveat that Carol is hiding a few things from Kamala. More on that in a bit. And in terms of Kamala doesn't obsess over Captain Marvel due to a tragic backstory involving serious trauma, dead parents, or pearls. No, she does it because she is a doof that, relatable to neurodivergent people in the real world, has hyperfixated on Captain Marvel, the character, to the point of being a fangirl, meaning that, unlike Kate Bishop, no outward source of pain caused her specific heroic infatuation of choice, because truly no form of trauma is the rationale as to why Kamala Khan has posters of Carol Danvers plastered on her bedroom wall, or why she has an epic ton of fan art where she and Captain Marvel are besties. No, that's just who Kamala Khan is, because when it comes to Kamala's antics, she is seen, she is valued, and she is loved. And overall, between the two characters of Carol and Kamala, that's a fun combination. Kamala wears her easily excitable emotions on her sleeves, which perfectly complements and contrasts with Carol's more level-headed nature, meaning that when it comes to character interactions, the duo are a perfect match. Carol's fraught relationship with Monica Rambeau is also interesting, but for different reasons. After all, Monica is the daughter of Maria Rambeau, Carol Danvers' BFF and flight mate in the Air Force back in the 80s, and due to Carol's closeness to Maria, Carol was like a second mother to Monica, all to the point that Monica referred to the future Captain Marvel as Aunt Carol. And while there's the excuse that Carol Danvers was just a very close family friend or whatever, we really need to be realistic about these things, because if anything, Carol's and Maria's relationship can easily be read as gay or bi, because truly, in recent blockbuster history, has a character been truly as queer-coded as Carol Danvers? Because holy shit, my gator sense is tingling. Sure, the directors of the first Captain Marvel have said that this read of Carol Danvers being queer was not intentional, but given the LGBTQ community's embracement of Captain Marvel as a character and how she has been portrayed in every movie since then, this really ensures that Carol's and Maria's friendship in the first movie was in actuality a romantic relationship, all to the point that their bedroom activity most likely embodied their mantra of higher, further, and faster. What I'm trying to say is that whether the original directors intended it or not, these two characters definitely they were definitely LGBTQ, a queer read that is especially given credence after Carol's portrayal in the Marvels and Avengers Endgame, which really embraced the queer aspect of Carol's identity even more, vis-a-vis her now confirmed relationship with Valkyrie and this haircut. And now going back to Captain Marvel with this information that supports this interpretation of the text, whether on purpose or not, Carol and Maria clearly had a relationship akin to that of two lesbian, bi, or pansexual women in real life. And no, I'm not just talking about sex anymore, though there was probably a lot of that. But instead, there was a clear emotional bond, because Carol and Maria truly loved each other to the point that they were probably more than just gals being pals. They were a family. And for that, getting back to Monica Rambeau, Carol was essentially Monica's second mother. Carol was clearly an important figure in her upbringing, which is why in the Marvels, a now grown-up Monica Rambeau is still hurt by how Carol has been absent from Monica's life ever since the conclusion of the first Captain Marvel film. After all, Carol left Earth to fight a faraway space war because, you know, it was a war in space, but did not really return home to Maria and Monica despite being a core member of their family. And due to being MIA, Carol missed important moments of Monica's life. She did not see Monica grow up, become an adult, be present when Maria passed away, or become aware that Monica gained superpowers after the events that transpired in WandaVision. Carol just missed so much of Monica's life, and without any form of explanation as to why. And for that reason, Monica has an understandable grievance with Captain Marvel, wondering what prevented Aunt Carol from being with her family. And that's an interesting angle for character development that the Marvels focuses on when the two inevitably reunite, as well as an angle that really complements Kamala's and Carol's earlier mentioned dynamic, because where Kamala is a Captain Marvel superfan with the equivalent amount of energy as me on Halo 3's 2007 release date downing 12 Mountain Dew game fuels, God, I really stretched to fit that joke in here. Monica comes from the perspective of someone who once adored Carol Danvers as a family member, but ultimately feels let down by her in the present, which is an understandable characterization and one that compares interestingly and stands in directly polar contrast to how Kamala views Carol. And for that, the core three characters just have an interesting dichotomy here. This brings us back to Carol Danvers. As stated earlier in this essay, in the previous movie Captain Marvel, Carol is portrayed as a noble heroine that has to reconcile with the fact that she is on the wrong side of an unjust war, kind of like how America often is. And as a result, in that film, Carol had to change accordingly so that her actions aligned with her altruistic values. And this is honestly a character trait that is further expanded upon in the Marvels. In the new movie, Carol is clearly hiding something. After all, the conflict revolves around the villainous Kree wanting revenge for actions that Carol committed in the past. Mysterious actions that at the time Carol felt was justified but had unintended side effects. Kind of like how I'm justified in taking a mood stabilizer to help me manage my intense bipolar depression, even though that said mood stabilizer has the unintended side effect of making me really damn sleepy to the point that I can down a Monster energy drink and then take a nice 2-hour afternoon nap without any qualms, because like a special Pokemon, that shit has no effect on me. But anyway, to get back on topic, Carol is morally conflicted. She has imperfections, and she understands all too well that her actions can have unfortunate consequences. Captain Marvel just has vulnerabilities, and she hates that. After all, she is supposed to be the most powerful Avenger. For f***'s sake, she uppercut a goddamn spaceship. But in the Marvels, even with all of her power, Carol is portrayed as fallible. Whether it comes to past decisions or the results of a physical conflict, even Captain Marvel is imperfect. A fact that she wants to hide from Monica, a person that she has wronged. A fact that unfortunately becomes apparent when Miss Marvel, i.e. the Captain Marvel fangirl who constantly gives Danvers adorable anime eyes, learns that even the mighty Captain Marvel cannot save everyone. And Carol has a difficult time accepting that, even with all of her power, that she is capable of making mistakes, that she is vulnerable. Carol's arc in the Marvels revolves around how she needs to personally open up. While as stated earlier, she prefers to lone wolf her problems and go it alone, Carol, for her own emotional well-being, needs to let Monica and Kamala into her inner circle. She needs to accept that she can't do everything by her lonesome, that she needs to trust others, and the Marvels successfully and rightfully makes this the core part of Carol's arc and emotional journey, giving this movie a lot of heart. Like a Hallmark movie, but good. The emotional storytelling involving Carol just works here. This thematic angle about Carol needing to rely and trust on others more is reflected in the physical narrative as well, mostly because, for the purpose of the Marvels, Captain Marvel has been debuffed in a very creative fashion, which is a story decision that makes sense. After all, Danvers is the MCU's most powerful superhero, and thus is very difficult to write for, mostly because she is so strong that she makes creating scenarios and villains where her raw power is challenged very tough on a writer's room. Because, you know, there was a reason that she was absent for a lot of Avengers Endgame. The reason being that Carol is so powerful that she would have rendered the movie's entire conflict moot if she was more present, hence why she left Earth for mysterious reasons involving that earlier mentioned unnamed space war. Because given her off-the-chart power level, Carol is a difficult character to write for, meaning that in a movie where she is the lead, our heroine needs to be written like a democracy and have some creative checks and balances. And the Marvels honestly does this quite successfully. For reasons of plot, Carol, Kamala, and Monica physically switch places when they use their light powers, something that poses two obstacles that Captain Marvel must overcome throughout the movie. Firstly, teleporting from one spot to another, often without warning, is very disorienting for Carol and difficult to manage when engaging in a physical confrontation that requires magical fisticuffs. And secondly, when using her powers that can potentially cause other characters to switch places with her, Carol has to worry about her less powerful heroic companions, due to how Captain Marvel can do spectacular things like being able to fly, whereas some of her teammates just cannot do that shit. Meaning that if Captain Marvel switches places with someone like the non-aviating Miss Marvel, that would put Kamala Khan in serious mortal jeopardy, because obviously. And for both of these reasons, this power check on Captain Marvel really complements Carol's emotional arc in the movie. After all, the Marvels is about Carol needing to trust others more and accept that she has vulnerabilities and even failings, and for that, overcoming the teleportation shenanigans hampering her mission requires Captain Marvel to communicate with other people, to open up so that Carol, Kamala, and Monica can all be the best versions of themselves. And for that, both the physical and the emotional hurdles that Captain Marvel must overcome are one and the same. The narrative just really reflects Carol's personal character development here. At the end of the day, this is why the Marvels worked for me. Even though it is a silly movie about superpowered girls in space featuring fun ideas and concepts, the emotional character beats and chemistry between Carol, Monica, and Kamala are fantastic and overall complement and build a narrative that is both a cinematic joyride and a movie where you can still take the stakes with some level of sincerity. It's a film that is enjoyable to watch, but one where you actually really care for the characters. And honestly, what more could you want from a Marvel movie these days? Because where so many Marvel Studios productions are inconsistent by dropping the ball on character development or having a movie that overall lacks reasons to care about its narrative, the Marvels honestly delivers on a quality production. The Marvels is actually quite good.